Eleanor Whitmore stood at the altar in her best black dress and knew everyone thought she was a fool. The preacher's voice shook as he read the vows. The wooden church was silent except for whispers. 80 people had come to watch this wedding. Not one of them smiled. Please subscribe to my channel for more stories. Eleanor looked at the young man beside her. Caleb Ross, 25 years old, tall and quiet with dark eyes that never looked away when she spoke to him. She was 85. Her hands were wrinkled and spotted with age. Her back hurt every morning, but her mind was still sharp as a knife. "Do you take this man to be your husband?" the preacher asked. Eleanor heard someone laugh in the back row. She didn't turn around. She knew what they all thought. That crazy old woman is marrying a boy young enough to be her great-grandson. He just wants her gold mine. He'll take everything and leave her to die alone. Maybe they were right. "I do," Eleanor said. Caleb's hand was warm when he took hers. His voice was steady. "I do." The preacher closed his book fast, like he wanted this whole thing over with. "I now pronounce you man and wife." No one clapped. No one cheered. Eleanor walked down the aisle with Caleb's arm under hers. She could feel every eye burning into her back. She heard the whispers grow louder. "She's lost her mind. That drifter showed up 2 months ago with nothing but a horse and a worn-out saddle. He'll kill her in her sleep and take the deed to her land." Outside the church, the October sun was hot and mean. Silver Creek looked like a town that was dying slow. Half the buildings were empty. The general store had broken windows. Tumbleweeds rolled down Main Street like they owned the place. This town used to matter. Back when Eleanor's husband Thomas was alive, Silver Creek had 300 people. Now it barely had 80. The mine had slowed down. The railroad never came. People left one family at a time. But Eleanor stayed. This was her land, her home. No one would take it from her. Sheriff Dawson walked up to them. He was a big man with a gray beard and tired eyes. He'd been sheriff for 30 years. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said. He didn't call her Mrs. Ross. "I need to speak with you, alone." "Anything you say to my wife, you can say to me," Caleb said. The sheriff's jaw tightened. 3 riders came through town this morning. They work for Clayton Hartwell. Eleanor's stomach dropped. A Clayton Hartwell. That name was poison in Silver Creek. Hartwell owned half of Montana. Ranches, mines, railroads. He bought up dying towns and squeezed them dry. For 5 years, he'd been trying to buy Eleanor's land. She always said no. Her property sat on the richest vein of silver in the territory. Everyone knew it. The mine had slowed down because Eleanor was old and couldn't work it alone. But the silver was still there, waiting. "What did those riders want?" Eleanor asked. "They didn't say, but they were asking questions about you, about your land, about who inherits it when you die." Eleanor felt Caleb's hand tighten on her arm. "Did they mention me?" Caleb asked. The sheriff stared at him. "They asked if the wedding was real, if you were really going to marry her, or if it was some kind of trick." "It's real," Caleb said. "Is it?" The sheriff stepped closer. His voice dropped low. "Listen to me, boy. I don't know who you are or where you came from. You rode into town with no money, no family, no past. Then suddenly you're sweet-talking the richest woman in Silver Creek. If you hurt her, if you take one thing that doesn't belong to you, I will hunt you down myself." Caleb didn't blink. "I'm not here to hurt her." "Then why are you here?" Caleb looked at Eleanor. Something passed between them. Something the sheriff couldn't see. "That's between me and my wife," Caleb said. The sheriff shook his head. He tipped his hat to Eleanor. You be careful, ma'am. Hartwell doesn't give up. And now that you're married, things just got more complicated. He walked away. Eleanor and Caleb stood alone in the dusty street. The wind picked up and blew Eleanor's gray hair across her face. Do you regret it? Caleb asked quietly. Eleanor looked at him, really looked at him. She'd only known him for 2 months. He'd shown up in Silver Creek on a tired horse, asking for work. She'd hired him to fix her fence, then her roof, then her barn. He was polite. He worked hard. He didn't drink or gamble like the other young men. And when he looked at her, he didn't see a helpless old woman. But she wasn't stupid. She knew people didn't marry someone 60 years older unless they wanted something. The question was, what did Caleb want? I don't regret it yet, Eleanor said. But ask me again in a week. Caleb almost smiled. Fair enough. They walked toward Eleanor's house on the edge of town. It was a big house. 2 stories, white paint peeling, surrounded by 20 acres of land. Beyond that was the mine. The entrance was boarded up now, but Eleanor still owned every inch of it. As they walked, Eleanor saw curtains move in windows. People were watching, judging, waiting for her to fail. Let them wait. She'd survived a husband's death, a son's death, 2 wars, 3 harsh winters, and 60 years in this brutal territory. She'd survived worse things than gossip. They reached the house. Caleb opened the door for her. Inside, everything was quiet. The house felt too big for 2 people. It used to be full of noise. Thomas's laughter, their son James running through the halls. Now it was just ghosts and memories. Eleanor sat down in her chair by the window. Caleb stood by the fireplace, his hat in his hands. You should know something, Caleb said. Eleanor's heart beat faster. Here it comes, she thought. The truth. I didn't come to Silver Creek by accident, Caleb said. I came looking for you. Eleanor's hands gripped the arms of her chair. Why? Because 60 years ago something happened in this town. Something that destroyed my family, and your husband was part of it. Eleanor went cold. What are you talking about? Caleb's eyes were hard now, dark and full of something that looked like pain. My grandfather's name was Samuel Ross. Does that name mean anything to you? Eleanor's breath caught. Samuel Ross. She hadn't heard that name in decades. I knew a Samuel Ross, she whispered. A long time ago. He and Thomas were partners in the mine, but Samuel left town suddenly. No one ever saw him again. He didn't leave, Caleb said. He was forced out, cheated. Your husband and 2 other men took everything Samuel owned. They made it look legal, but it was theft. Eleanor stood up. Her legs shook, but she forced herself to stay strong. That's a lie. Thomas would never. My grandfather died broken and poor, Caleb said. His voice was louder now. He lost his land, his money, his reputation. He told my father the truth before he died. He made my father promise to get justice. But my father died too before he could do anything about it. So now, it's my turn. Eleanor's mind raced. Thomas had never mentioned cheating anyone, but there were things about those early years, those hard years when the mine was just starting, that Thomas never talked about. If this is true, Eleanor said slowly, then why did you marry me? Why not just take me to court? Oh, or shoot me in the street like the old days? Caleb looked at her for a long moment. Because when I came to Silver Creek, I expected to find a villain, he said quietly. I expected to find someone cruel and greedy like your husband. But instead, I found you. And you're not what I expected. Before Eleanor could respond, the sound of horses filled the air. Lots of horses. Caleb moved to the window. His whole body went tense. "Who is it?" Eleanor asked. "Riders, at least 10 of them. Coming fast." Eleanor's blood turned to ice. She knew who it was before Caleb said it. "It's Hartwell's men." Eleanor grabbed her late husband's rifle from above the fireplace. Her hands didn't shake. Caleb stared at her. "What are you doing?" "This is my land," Eleanor said, "and no one takes what's mine." The riders stopped outside. Boots hit the ground. A fist pounded on the door. A voice called out, deep and cold. "Mrs. Whitmore, open the door. We need to talk about your property and your new husband." Eleanor looked at Caleb. In his eyes, she saw fear, but also something else. Determination. "Do you trust me?" Caleb asked. It was the most important question anyone had ever asked her. Outside, the pounding got louder. "Open this door or we'll break it down." Eleanor had 3 seconds to decide. Trust the young man who'd just admitted his family had a blood grudge against hers, or face Hartwell's men alone. She made her choice. "I trust you," Eleanor said. Caleb nodded once. Then he pulled a revolver from inside his coat. A gun she'd never seen before. "Then let them in," Caleb said. "Because I didn't come to Silver Creek just for revenge. I came to finish what my grandfather started. And that means protecting you from the same men who destroyed him." The door exploded inward. 5 men crashed through the door. Eleanor raised her rifle. Caleb aimed his revolver. But the men didn't draw their guns. They just stood there, blocking the doorway like a wall of leather and dust. The one in front was tall with a scar across his cheek. He smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "No need for weapons, Mrs. Whitmore," he said. "We're just here to deliver a message." "Then deliver it and get off my property," Eleanor said. Her fingers stayed on the trigger. The man pulled a folded paper from his coat. "Mr. Clayton Hartwell is making you a final offer. $20,000 for your land in the mine. That's more than fair." "I've told Hartwell no 100 times," Eleanor said. "The answer hasn't changed." The man's smile grew colder. "Things are different now. You're married. That changes the legal situation. See, when you die, your new husband inherits everything. And Mr. Hartwell did some checking on your husband." He turned to look at Caleb. "Caleb Ross, age 25. No property, no money, no family anyone can find. You appeared out of nowhere 2 months ago. That's mighty suspicious." "My past is none of your business," Caleb said. "It is when you marry the richest widow in Montana." The man said, "Mr. Hartwell thinks you're a con man. He thinks you married Mrs. Whitmore to steal her land, and he's prepared to go to the territorial judge to prove it." Eleanor's hands tightened on the rifle. "You can't do that." "We can try, and while the courts decide if this marriage is legal, Mr. Hartwell can file a claim on the mine, says it's been abandoned, not worked in over a year. Territorial law says abandoned mines can be seized for public interest." "That's robbery," Eleanor said. "That's the law, ma'am." The man dropped the paper on the floor. "You have 3 days to accept the offer. After that, Mr. Hartwell takes what he wants, with or without your permission." He tipped his hat and walked out. The other 4 men followed. When they were gone, Eleanor's legs finally gave out. She sat down hard in her chair. The rifle fell to the floor. Caleb locked what was left of the broken door. Then he knelt beside her. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No, just old and angry." Eleanor looked at him. "They're going to take everything. The mine, the land, my home." "Not if we work it," Caleb said. Eleanor blinked. "What?" "The mine. They said it's abandoned because no one's worked it, so we work it. We prove it's active, then they can't claim it. Caleb, I'm 85 years old. I can't dig silver out of a mine. But I can. Eleanor stared at him. You want to work my mine? Why would you do that? You just told me your grandfather was cheated by my husband. You should be happy to see me lose everything. Caleb stood up and walked to the window. The sun was setting, turning the sky orange and red. I told you I came here for revenge, he said quietly. And I did. I spent 3 years tracking down what happened to my grandfather. I learned that Thomas Whitmore and 2 other men forged documents to steal Samuel Ross's share of the mine. They made my grandfather look like a thief and ran him out of town. Eleanor's chest felt tight. She didn't want to believe it. But she'd been married to Thomas for 40 years. She knew he wasn't perfect. In those early days, when the mine was new and money was scarce, men did terrible things to survive. Who were the other 2 men? Eleanor asked. John Mercer and Clayton Hartwell. Eleanor's blood went cold. Hartwell was involved? Caleb nodded. Hartwell was young back then, just starting out. He and Thomas and Mercer were partners with my grandfather. When they found the silver vein, they realized it was worth a fortune. So they cut my grandfather out, took his share, destroyed his reputation so he couldn't fight back. What happened to him? He died 10 years later, broken, alone. He never stopped trying to prove what they did to him, but no one would listen to a disgraced miner with no money. Eleanor felt tears burn her eyes. I didn't know. Thomas never told me. Because he was ashamed, Caleb said. I found his journals after you hired me. You have a box of them in the attic. I read them while you were in town one day. Eleanor should have been angry that he went through her things, but she was too tired. What did the journals say? She asked. That Thomas regretted it every day of his life, that the guilt ate at him. He wrote that he tried to find Samuel and make it right, but Samuel had disappeared. Thomas never knew Samuel died. Caleb turned to face her. Your husband wasn't a monster, Eleanor. He made a mistake when he was desperate, but he paid for it. Then why are you here? Eleanor asked. If Thomas is dead, what's left to take revenge on? Caleb's jaw tightened. John Mercer died 5 years ago, but Clayton Hartwell is still alive, still stealing from people, still destroying lives like he destroyed my grandfather's. He's not just coming after your land because it's valuable. He's coming after it because he doesn't want anyone to find out what he did 60 years ago. What do you mean? Your mine has records, old documents, contracts. If someone digs deep enough, they'll find proof that Hartwell helped steal from my grandfather. That proof could destroy Hartwell's reputation, ruin his business empire. He can't let that happen. Eleanor's mind raced. So he's trying to buy my land before anyone finds those documents? And when you kept saying no, he decided to take it by force. He probably planned to burn everything after he seized the mine. Destroy the evidence. Eleanor stood up. Her back screamed in pain, but she ignored it. Then we can't let him have it, she said. Ooh, those documents are proof of what Hartwell did. We can use them to stop him. It's not that simple, Caleb said. Even if we find proof, Hartwell has judges and sheriffs in his pocket. He's too powerful. No one will stand against him. Then what do we do? Caleb walked over to her. He took both her hands in his. His grip was strong and warm. We work the mine, he said. We prove it's active so Hartwell can't seize it. And while I'm down there digging, I look for those documents. Once we have proof, we don't go to the law. We go to the newspapers, make it public. Hartwell can buy off one judge, but he can't buy off the whole territory. Eleanor searched his face. Why are you helping me? You could have just exposed Hartwell yourself. You didn't need to marry me. Caleb's expression softened. Because when I came to Silver Creek, I thought you were part of the crime. I thought you knew what Thomas did and helped him. I was going to seduce you, marry you, take everything, and leave you with nothing. The same way Hartwell and Thomas left my grandfather. Eleanor's heart cracked. But I was wrong. You're not cruel. You're not greedy. You're just a woman trying to survive in a hard world. And when I realized that, I couldn't go through with my plan. He squeezed her hands. So I married you to protect you. Because Hartwell is coming, and you can't fight him alone. Tears ran down Eleanor's face. She didn't know if she believed him completely, but she knew one thing. She was out of options. Okay, she said. We work the mine. Caleb smiled. It was the first real smile she'd seen from him. We start tomorrow at dawn, he said. That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed upstairs, while Caleb slept downstairs on the couch. They hadn't talked about sharing a room. This marriage wasn't about love. It was about survival. But lying in the dark, Eleanor thought about what Caleb had said. That Thomas regretted what he'd done. That the guilt ate at him. She remembered the last years of Thomas's life. How quiet he'd become. How he'd stare at the mine for hours without saying anything. She'd thought he was just getting old. But maybe he was haunted. Eleanor got out of bed and climbed the narrow stairs to the attic. Dust covered everything. Old furniture, boxes of clothes, and in the corner, a trunk full of Thomas's journals. She opened the trunk. The leather books were worn and faded. She picked one at random and opened it. Thomas's handwriting filled the pages. The date at the top said June 1820. The year the mine opened. She read, "We did it. We forced Samuel out. He screamed that we were thieves, but no one believed him. Clayton made sure of that. He paid the sheriff to arrest Samuel for drunk and disorderly. By morning, Samuel was gone. He left everything behind. His tools, his claim, his dignity. I tell myself we had no choice. The mine wouldn't support 4 partners. Someone had to go, but I see Samuel's face every night when I close my eyes. I see the betrayal, the hurt. God forgive me." Eleanor closed the book. Her hands shook. Thomas had done it. He'd really betrayed Samuel Ross. She heard a noise downstairs. Footsteps. Caleb was awake. Eleanor climbed down from the attic and found Caleb standing by the broken door, looking out at the dark street. "Can't sleep?" she asked. He shook his head. "Thinking about tomorrow, about what we're going to find in that mine." Eleanor walked over to him. "I read Thomas's journals. You were right. He did it. He helped steal from your grandfather." Caleb didn't look surprised. "I know. Are you still angry?" Caleb was quiet for a long time. "I'm angry at what happened. But Thomas is dead. Being angry at a dead man won't bring my grandfather back." "Then what do you want?" Caleb finally looked at her. "I want to stop Hartwell. I want to make sure he can't do to anyone else what he did to my family. And I want you to keep your home." Eleanor felt something shift in her chest. Maybe Caleb wasn't here just for revenge. Maybe he was here for justice. There was a difference. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For telling me the truth. For not lying about why you came." Caleb nodded. "I'm done with lies." They stood together in the darkness, 2 people tied together by old sins and new dangers. Outside, the wind howled. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote cried. And then Eleanor heard something else. The sound of horses, lots of them, coming fast. Caleb heard it too. He grabbed his revolver. "It's too soon," Eleanor said. "We still have 3 days." The horses stopped outside. Boots hit the ground, but this time, no one knocked. Instead, something crashed through the window. A bottle with a rag stuffed in the top. The rag was on fire. The bottle hit the floor and exploded. Flames spread across the wooden boards. "Get out!" Caleb shouted. He grabbed Eleanor's arm and pulled her toward the back door. But before they reached it, another bottle came through the kitchen window. More flames. The house was burning. Outside, men laughed. Someone shouted, "Burn it down! Burn it all!" Caleb kicked open the back door. Smoke filled Eleanor's lungs. She coughed and stumbled, but Caleb held her up. They ran into the yard. Behind them, the house roared with fire. Flames climbed the walls and reached for the sky. Eleanor turned and saw riders circling the property. At least 20 of them. They threw more bottles. The barn caught fire, the storage shed, everything. And standing at the front of the riders, watching it all burn, was a man Eleanor had never seen before. But she knew who he was. Clayton Hartwell. He was old now, 70 at least. But he sat tall on his horse like a king. Hartwell saw Eleanor and smiled. "You should have taken my offer, Mrs. Whitmore," he called out. "Now you have nothing." Eleanor's home, her barn, her life's work, all of it was burning. Caleb raised his revolver, but Hartwell's men raised theirs faster. 20 guns aimed at Caleb and Eleanor. "Go ahead, boy," Hartwell said. "Pull that trigger. See what happens." Caleb's hand shook with rage, but he lowered the gun. Hartwell laughed. "Smart choice. Now listen carefully. You have until sunrise to get out of Silver Creek. If I see either of you after that, my men will make sure you disappear. Do you understand?" Eleanor couldn't speak. She could only watch her home burn. Hartwell tipped his hat. "Pleasure doing business with you." He and his men rode away, leaving Eleanor and Caleb standing in the firelight. Everything was gone. Everything except the mine. Eleanor turned to Caleb. Her face was covered in soot. Her eyes burned from smoke and tears. "He thinks he's won," she said. "Hasn't he?" Caleb asked quietly. Eleanor looked at the mine entrance in the distance. The boards were still there. The silver was still waiting underneath. "No," Eleanor said. Her voice was hard as iron. "He hasn't won, because he forgot something." "What?" Eleanor's eyes blazed with fury. "I'm not dead yet, and that mine still belongs to me." She started walking toward the mine. Her house burned behind her, but she didn't look back. Caleb ran to catch up. "Eleanor, wait. What are you doing?" "We're going to work that mine right now. Tonight. We're going to dig up enough silver to prove it's active, and we're going to find those documents." "It's the middle of the night. We don't have tools. We don't have light. We don't have—" Eleanor stopped and grabbed his arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "We have each other," she said. "And we have nothing left to lose. That makes us the most dangerous people in Silver Creek." Caleb stared at her. Then slowly, he smiled. "You're tougher than I thought, old woman. Don't you forget it." They reached the mine entrance. Caleb pulled away the boards. Darkness yawned open like a mouth. Eleanor struck a match. The flame flickered in her hand. "Let's go find out what my husband was hiding," she said. They stepped into the mine together. Behind them, the house collapsed in a shower of sparks and ash. Ahead of them, in the darkness, 60 years of secrets waited to be uncovered. And somewhere in the night, Clayton Hartwell was about to learn that destroying an old woman's home was the biggest mistake of his life. The mine was colder than Eleanor remembered. She held the lamp while Caleb searched the walls. Their shadows danced across the stone like ghosts. Water dripped somewhere deep in the darkness. "How far back does it go?" Caleb asked. About 300 feet. Thomas dug 4 different tunnels looking for the main vein. Only one of them hit silver. Eleanor's voice echoed off the walls. She'd been down here only twice in her life. Once when Thomas first opened the mine. Once when they buried the documents. Wait. Eleanor stopped walking. That memory hit her like a punch. She remembered now. 20 years ago, just before Thomas died, he'd made her come down here with him. He'd been acting strange for weeks, nervous, scared. He'd brought a metal box. He'd hidden it somewhere in the mine. He'd made her promise never to tell anyone. But she'd been so grief-stricken after his death that she'd forgotten all about it. Until now. Caleb, she said, I think I know where the documents are. He turned to her. Where? Thomas hid something down here before he died, a box. He made me swear to keep it secret. Can you remember where? Eleanor closed her eyes. She thought back 20 years. She'd been 65 then. Her hair had just started turning gray. Thomas had been so weak, dying from pneumonia. But he'd insisted on coming down here one last time. He'd taken her to the 4th tunnel. The one that never found silver. The dead end. This way, Eleanor said. She led Caleb deeper into the mine. The air got thicker, harder to breathe. The lamp flame flickered. They passed the 1st tunnel. The 2nd. The 3rd. Finally, they reached the 4th. It was narrow and low. Caleb had to duck his head. 50 feet in, the tunnel ended at a wall of solid rock. It's here somewhere, Eleanor said. She ran her hands along the wall. Thomas put it behind a loose stone. They searched together. Eleanor's fingers were stiff and cold, but she kept feeling every inch of the wall. Then she found it, a stone that wiggled when she pushed it. Here, she said. Caleb helped her pull the stone free. Behind it was a small hollow carved into the rock, and inside the hollow was a metal box. Caleb lifted it out carefully. It was rusted and heavy. A lock held it shut. Do you have the key? Caleb asked. Thomas wore it on a chain around his neck. When he died, I buried him with it. Caleb looked at the lock. Then he smashed it with a rock. The lock broke. The box opened. Inside were papers. Dozens of them. Yellowed with age, but still readable. Caleb pulled them out one by one. His hands shook as he read. These are the original partnership agreements, he whispered, from when the mine first opened. Thomas Whitmore, John Mercer, Clayton Hartwell, and Samuel Ross. 4 equal partners. He kept reading. And here's the forged document, the one that said Samuel sold his share to the others. His signature is fake. You can see it doesn't match the real one. Eleanor felt sick. What else is there? Caleb pulled out another paper. This one was a letter. He read it out loud. Dear Samuel, I know you'll never read this because I don't have the courage to send it, but I need to write it anyway. What we did to you is wrong. I let greed and fear turn me into a thief. Clayton said it was necessary. He said you were going to sell your share to outsiders who would ruin everything. He convinced me and John that we had no choice, but that was a lie. We had a choice. We chose wrong. I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry. If you're still alive, I hope you found peace. I know I never will. Thomas Whitmore. Caleb's voice cracked on the last words. He folded the letter carefully and put it back in the box. My grandfather never found peace, Caleb said quietly. He died angry and broken. Eleanor touched his shoulder. But now the truth is out. Now everyone will know what really happened. Caleb nodded. He gathered all the papers and put them back in the box. We need to get these to a newspaper. Fast. before Hartwell realizes what we found." They hurried back through the mine. Eleanor's heart pounded. They were so close. Justice for Samuel Ross, protection for her land, a chance to stop Clayton Hartwell. But when they reached the mine entrance, the sun was starting to rise, and blocking their path were 3 men. Not Hartwell's men, different men, older. One of them was Sheriff Dawson. Eleanor's stomach sank. "Sheriff," she said, "what are you doing here?" Dawson looked tired and sad. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Whitmore, but I have orders to arrest your husband." "On what charge?" Eleanor demanded. One of the other men stepped forward. He wore a fancy suit and carried a leather folder. "My name is Judge Morris. I have a warrant here for the arrest of Caleb Ross on charges of fraud and attempted theft. Mr. Clayton Hartwell has presented evidence that Mr. Ross married you under false pretenses in order to steal your property." "That's a lie," Eleanor said. "That will be for the court to decide," the judge said. "Mr. Ross will remain in custody until trial, which will be held 3 days from now." 3 days, exactly the deadline Hartwell had given them. Caleb's face was calm, but his eyes were fierce. He leaned close to Eleanor and whispered, "Don't let them take the box." Then he stepped forward and held out his hands. "I'll go peacefully." The sheriff put handcuffs on him. Eleanor's chest hurt like someone was squeezing her heart. "This is Hartwell's doing," she said to the sheriff. "He's using you." "I'm just following the law, ma'am," Dawson said. But he wouldn't meet her eyes. They led Caleb away. He looked back at Eleanor one last time. His expression said everything. "Keep fighting. Don't give up. Finish this." Eleanor stood alone at the mine entrance, holding the metal box. Her home was ashes. Her husband was in jail. And Clayton Hartwell had won, or so he thought. Eleanor looked down at the box in her hands. Inside were 60 years of secrets. Proof of Hartwell's crimes. Proof that could destroy him. But she couldn't go to the local newspaper. Hartwell probably owned them. And she couldn't go to the sheriff. He was already in Hartwell's pocket. She needed to go bigger. She needed to go to the territorial capital. To newspapers that Hartwell couldn't control. But that was 200 miles away. It would take her 3 days to get there on horseback. And she was 85 years old. She'd never make it. Unless she didn't go on horseback. Eleanor remembered something. The train. The railroad that was supposed to come to Silver Creek never did. But it ran through a town called Benson, 15 miles south. If she could get to Benson, she could take the train to the capital. She could get there in 1 day. But she'd have to leave now. And she'd have to go alone. Eleanor looked back at the burned ruins of her home. Everything she'd built with Thomas was gone. But maybe that was fitting. The old life had to burn away before the new one could begin. She tucked the box under her arm and started walking toward town. The streets were empty. Most people were still asleep. But a few early risers stared at her as she passed. She knew what they were thinking. That crazy old woman. Her house burned down and her husband's in jail, and she's still walking around like nothing happened. Let them think what they wanted. Eleanor went to the livery stable. Old Marcus was feeding the horses. He looked up when she came in. "Mrs. Whitmore?" he said. "No, I heard about the fire. I'm sorry." "I need a horse, Marcus. Your fastest one." Marcus frowned. "Ma'am, I don't think that's a good idea. You should rest. Let the sheriff handle things." "The sheriff works for Hartwell now. Everyone in this town works for Hartwell now, except you and me." Eleanor pulled out the last of her money. $50. Everything she had left. "This is yours if you give me a horse and don't tell anyone where I went." Marcus looked at the money. He was poor. His stable was falling apart. $50 was a fortune to him. He took the money. The brown mare in the back is your best bet. She's old, but she's strong, like you. Eleanor almost smiled. Thank you, Marcus. She saddled the horse herself. Her hands remembered the motions, even though it had been years. When she was young, she could ride for hours without stopping. Now her bones ached just getting on the horse. But she climbed up anyway. Marcus handed her a canteen of water. Benson is 15 miles south. Stay on the main road. And Mrs. Whitmore, give Hartwell hell. Eleanor nodded. Then she rode out of Silver Creek. The sun climbed higher as she traveled. The desert stretched out in every direction. Dust and rocks and nothing else. It was beautiful and deadly at the same time. Eleanor's back screamed with pain, her legs cramped. But she kept riding. She thought about Caleb sitting in a jail cell. She thought about Samuel Ross dying alone and broken. She thought about all the people Hartwell had hurt over the years, and she thought about Thomas, her husband, the man she'd loved for 40 years. The man who'd made a terrible mistake and spent the rest of his life trying to atone for it. Maybe this was Eleanor's atonement too, for not seeing the truth sooner, for not asking the hard questions. Hours passed. The sun beat down on her. She drank from the canteen. The water was warm and tasted like metal, but it kept her alive. Finally, she saw it. Benson. A small town clustered around a train station. Smoke rose from the locomotive. The train was there, getting ready to leave. Eleanor pushed the horse faster. Her whole body hurt, but she didn't care. She reached the station just as the train whistle blew. "Wait!" she shouted. She slid off the horse and ran to the platform. A conductor was closing the passenger car door. "Please," Eleanor gasped. "I need to get on." The conductor looked at her. He saw an old woman covered in dust and soot, holding a rusty metal box. "Ticket?" he asked. Eleanor's heart sank. She'd given all her money to Marcus. She had nothing left. "I don't have money," she said, "but I have something more important. Information that could bring down Clayton Hartwell." The conductor's eyebrows went up. "The Clayton Hartwell?" "Yes. He burned my house down. He arrested my husband. And he's been stealing from people for 60 years. I have proof." She held up the box. "I'm taking it to the newspapers in the capital, but I need to get there today. Please." The conductor stared at her for a long moment. Then he stepped aside. "Get on." Eleanor climbed onto the train. Her legs almost gave out, but she made it. The conductor helped her to a seat. "Hartwell owns half this territory," he said quietly. "It's about time someone stood up to him." The train lurched forward. Eleanor pressed her face against the window and watched Benson disappear behind her. She'd done it. She was on her way. But she wasn't safe yet. The train had been moving for an hour when Eleanor heard shouting from the front car. Then gunshots. Passengers screamed. People dove under their seats. Eleanor stayed sitting. She clutched the box to her chest and waited. Heavy footsteps came down the aisle. Eleanor didn't have to look up to know who it was. Clayton Hartwell stood over her. He was older in person than she'd expected. His face was lined and hard, but his eyes were sharp and cold. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, "I should have known you'd be trouble." 4 of his men stood behind him. They had guns drawn. "How did you find me?" Eleanor asked. "I own this railroad. The conductor sent me a telegraph the minute you got on board." Hartwell held out his hand. "Give me the box." "No." Hartwell sighed. He pulled out his own gun and aimed it at her head. "I don't want to shoot an old woman on a train full of witnesses, but I will if you force me." Eleanor looked around. Every passenger was watching, scared, waiting to see what she'd do. She thought about Caleb, about Samuel, about Thomas, about all the people who'd suffered because of this man's greed. And she realized something. She wasn't afraid anymore. "Go ahead," Eleanor said. "Shoot me. Right here, in front of everyone. Let them all see what kind of man you really are." Hartwell's jaw tightened. "You think I won't?" "I think you're a coward who hides behind lawyers and hired guns. I think you're terrified of what's in this box because it proves you're a thief." Hartwell's hand shook with rage. His finger moved to the trigger. And then a voice called out from the back of the car. "Don't do it, Hartwell." Everyone turned. A young man stood there with a notebook and pencil. He looked about 30. He wore glasses and a vest. "My name is Daniel Price," the young man said. "I'm a reporter for the Montana Gazette, and if you shoot this woman, I'll make sure the whole territory knows about it by tomorrow morning." Other passengers started standing up. An older woman said, "I'll testify too." A man in a work shirt nodded. "So will I." More and more people stood, all willing to be witnesses against Hartwell. Hartwell looked around. For the first time, Eleanor saw fear in his eyes. He couldn't shoot her now. Too many people watching, too much attention. He lowered his gun. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," Eleanor said. She turned to the reporter. "Mr. Price, would you like to hear a story about fraud, theft, and murder that goes back 60 years? The reporter's eyes lit up. "I absolutely would." Eleanor opened the box. She spread the documents out on the seat. She told the reporter everything. About Samuel Ross, about the forged contract, about Thomas's confession, about Hartwell's crimes. The reporter wrote furiously, his pencil flying across the page. Hartwell stood frozen. He couldn't stop her now. The truth was coming out. "You'll regret this," Hartwell said quietly. "I don't think I will," Eleanor said. Hartwell and his men left the train at the next stop. Eleanor watched him go. He looked smaller somehow, defeated. The reporter kept writing. Other passengers crowded around to listen to Eleanor's story. By the time the train reached the capital, Daniel Price had enough material for a dozen articles. He helped Eleanor off the train. "Mrs. Whitmore, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "What made you do this? You could have taken Hartwell's money and lived comfortably for the rest of your life. Why risk everything?" Eleanor thought about it. "Because some things are more important than comfort. Justice, truth, doing what's right even when it's hard." She smiled. "Besides, I'm 85 years old. If not now, when?" The reporter laughed. "That's a good line. I'm using it in the article." Eleanor spent the next 2 days in the capital. She gave interviews to 3 different newspapers. She showed the documents to a territorial judge who wasn't in Hartwell's pocket. She told her story again and again until her voice was hoarse. And 3 days after she arrived, the headlines hit. "Montana land baron exposed in 60-year-old fraud." "Clayton Hartwell's empire built on theft and lies. Brave widow brings down corrupt tycoon." Eleanor bought every newspaper she could find. Then she took the train back to Silver Creek. When she arrived, the town was different. People stared at her, but not with pity or judgment anymore. With respect. She went straight to the sheriff's office. Dawson met her at the door. He looked embarrassed. "Mrs. Whitmore, I owe you an apology. I released Caleb this morning. The judge dropped all charges." "Where is he?" "At the boarding house." "He's been waiting for you." Eleanor found Caleb sitting on the porch. When he saw her, he stood up. They looked at each other for a long moment. Then Caleb smiled. "You did it," he said. "We did it," Eleanor corrected. She showed him the newspapers. He read them slowly, his eyes getting wider with each line. "Hartwell's finished," Caleb said. "His business partners are abandoning him. The territorial governor opened an investigation. He'll be lucky if he doesn't end up in prison." "Good," Eleanor said. They sat together on the porch steps. The sun was setting over Silver Creek. The town still looked half dead, but maybe now it had a chance. "What happens now?" Caleb asked. "I rebuild my house. You work the mine. We find that silver vein and make this town rich again." "That could take years." "Then I guess you're stuck with me for a while." Eleanor looked at him. "Unless you want to leave. Your grandfather has justice now. You don't owe me anything." Caleb was quiet for a long time. Then he took her hand. His grip was warm and strong. "Maybe I don't owe you," he said, "but I want to stay anyway." "Why?" "Because I came to Silver Creek looking for revenge, but I found something better. Purpose. A home. Family." He squeezed her hand. "I found you?" Eleanor felt tears in her eyes, but they were good tears this time. "Then let's get to work," she said. Over the next 6 months, Eleanor and Caleb rebuilt. The house went up first, smaller than before, but sturdy. Then they opened the mine. Caleb dug every day while Eleanor managed the business. And they found it. The main silver vein. Bigger and richer than anyone had imagined. Word spread. Miners came back to Silver Creek. New families arrived. The general store reopened. The church got a new roof. The town came back to life. Eleanor and Caleb worked side by side. People stopped whispering about the strange marriage. They saw how Caleb cared for Eleanor, how he listened to her, how he made her laugh. And they saw how Eleanor trusted him, how she defended him, how she looked at him with something that might have been love. One evening, Eleanor and Caleb sat on their new porch watching the sunset. Eleanor's bones hurt less these days, or maybe she was just too happy to notice the pain. "I got a letter today," Caleb said, "from my father's brother, my uncle. He heard about what we did, about exposing Hartwell. He said my grandfather would have been proud." "He should be," Eleanor said. "You gave him justice." "We gave him justice." Caleb looked at her. "I've been thinking about something." "What?" "When I first came here, I married you to protect you. But somewhere along the way, it became real for me. You became real." He took her hand. "I know I'm 60 years younger than you. I know people will always think it's strange, but I don't care what they think anymore." Eleanor's heart beat faster. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I love you, Eleanor Whitmore. Not your land, not your mine. You, your strength, your courage, your stubborn refusal to give up." He smiled. "Will you stay married to me? For real this time?" Eleanor looked at this young man who'd come to her for revenge and stayed for love. This man who'd saved her life and let her save his in return. She thought about Thomas, about their 40 years together, the good and the bad. She'd loved him deeply, and she knew he'd want her to be happy. "Yes," Eleanor said. "I'll stay married to you." Caleb kissed her hand. It was gentle and sweet and full of promise. They sat together as the sun set over Silver Creek. The sky turned orange and red and purple. The town below them buzzed with life. Eleanor was 85 years old. She'd lost her first husband, buried her son, survived a fire, fought a war against a powerful man, and won. She'd also found love again, real love, the kind that had nothing to do with age or time or what made sense to other people, the kind that just was. "What are you thinking about?" Caleb asked. Eleanor smiled. "I'm thinking that this is a good ending." "Ending? We're just getting started." He was right. The mine was producing silver. The town was growing. They had years of work ahead of them. But it was also an ending. The end of secrets and lies. The end of guilt and revenge. The end of being alone, and the beginning of something new. Eleanor leaned her head on Caleb's shoulder. He put his arm around her. They sat like that until the stars came out. In the distance, the mine entrance stood open. Tomorrow, they'd go back down. They'd dig more silver. They'd build more of a future. But tonight, they just sat together. An 85-year-old widow and a 25-year-old drifter who'd found each other in the dying town of Silver Creek. And against all odds, they'd both found exactly what they needed. Justice, truth, purpose, home, and love. Real, true, unexpected love. The kind that changes everything. The end.